Welcome back to Double eedrummer. Several weeks ago, I decided it was time to take advantage of some of the specials going on with recording equipment and complete my mic setup for my drums. Previously, I had an SM57 on the batter side of my snare, an AKG D112 on the outside of my kick, a D4 from Audix on my floor tom, a couple of overheads, and an SM81 as my room mic. My goal was to get spot mics on all the toms, move to a dual mic setup for the snare with one on top, one on bottom, and maybe move to a dual mic setup on the kick with one inside and one outside. One of the specials I mentioned was the D2 Trio, which is a lot cheaper than trying to buy 3 D2s individually. So I thought this would do well for taking care of 3 out of the 4 toms that I had. I figured I'd get an i5 for the snare, put that as the batter, and then move my SM57 to the snare side. That leaves me with one more mic to get for my toms. Now my setup includes an 8-inch, a 10-inch, a 12-inch, a 14-inch, and a 16-inch tom. As I mentioned before, I already have a D4 on the 16-inch tom, so this D2 Trio will cover 3 out of the 4 remaining toms. As the D2 has a higher frequency response than some of the other D mics, I figure it makes the most sense to put that on the 8, 10, and 12. This leaves me with a 14-inch and leaves me with a question. Where's the right crossover point on the diameter of toms to go from a high frequency response, like the D2, to a lower frequency response, like the D4? As luck would have it, the store I ordered the D2s from, instead of ordering D2s, ordered D6s. There's a video on that here. So I took one of those D6s, put it on the floor tom, took the D4, moved it to the 14-inch, bought a new D2 Trio with money made by selling off the remaining D6s, and used that for the 8, 10, and 12-inch toms. But this brought an interesting question. I still was curious where a good crossover point was for those toms to switch from maybe a D2 to a D4, and now I had a D6. So the purpose of this video today is really just to compare the frequency response of those 3 mics across the entire tom setup that I have. So I'm going to take each one of the toms, put the D2, the D4, and the D6 on it, and then maybe for a baseline also throw an i5 and an SM57. Now I'm not an audio engineer. In fact, I've only been working on recording with the drums for a couple of years now, so there's a lot I have to learn. But I still think this might be an interesting comparison. Well, there you have it. As I mentioned before, I'm not an audio engineer, so I'm not going to make any blanket statements about one mic being better than another on any specific tom. I figured I just put this out there and people can make their own decision. Now, that being said, if you have any comments on this or would like to see any other comparison, please let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. See you next time.